So I will just do this for the recording, but I'm going to talk about Silicon Valley Bank for a second. So Silicon Valley Bank, despite the fact that they do this big wine report that has huge influence on everything, they actually have a very small number of wine clients. And the other thing is they are rumored to be incredibly difficult to work with. They don't understand agriculture all that well. And part of their drive behind doing the report is to drum up business, right? That's the only reason they would ever do it, and to get status. And it doesn't really matter very much. So even if there wasn't a bailout, most of the small wineries, $250,000 would be okay, because that's probably almost all they have. And the large wineries can kind of can make it work. So there are a few large wine clients, but again, if Silicon Valley Bank had collapsed completely, which I guess it did, but had collapsed completely without refunds, the impact on the wine industry would be tiny. Most farmers actually bank with Bank of America or Wells Fargo or local banks, because they understand that Silicon Valley Bank does not fundamentally understand farming. And the loans that you have to take seasonally or occasionally are going to have to be financed by somebody who understands agriculture. So there you go. Any questions about that? Just thought I'd throw it out there, because I know some people have been like, oh my God, Silicon Valley Bank. Doesn't really matter. All right. So let us taste who has, we're going to start with like the lightest and go to the heaviest. I think that I'm going to start with the Riesling. I was going to start with the Sauvignon Blanc, but it has a very strong character. So I'm going to start with the Riesling. Who among us is trying the Riesling?
I am.
Yay. Okay. So we got a couple. So I'm going to talk about Pfalz a little bit, and I will talk about this wine in particular, which I find, if you have tasted it so far, stunning. I think it is absolutely stunning. Molly already drank hers. Tim already drank his. So this Riesling is from Pfalz. I have said, we did a whole podcast on Pfalz. I really like Pfalz. I think Pfalz has the same character that Alsace has, but in the German way. So Pfalz is over the Rhine. So you have Alsace in France, which is bordered by the Vosges Mountains. That's going to make it very dry and very sunny. And the Rhine doesn't actually have a lot of impact on the region, except that from a political standpoint, of course, it's near Germany, and the Rhine made it very easy for conquering and stuff like that. But right on the other side, you have the Vosges Mountains here, then you've got the sort of plain of Alsace, and then you have the Rhine. And then on the other side, you have a continuation of the Vosges Mountains, which is the Haut Mountains. And that is where Pfalz is. Now, Pfalz, for a very long time, was kind of a very disgusting, gross bulk wine region that made horrible stuff. And then in the early 2000s, people recognized that there were a few producers doing really interesting things, and that it wasn't that far away from Alsace, which has status, of course. And they started to invest more in the Riesling, especially of Pfalz. They do Pinot Gris, they do Pinot Blanc, but really the star of the show in Pfalz is Riesling all the way. So when you taste this wine, if you have not had it already, so Greg, it sort of does sound like Pfalz. It does. It sounds like Pfalz, it's similar. Okay, so this is the Philippe Bassler. This is an interesting wine because there is a video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, that I recorded with, now I can't remember his name, but the guy from Robert Weiss. Okay, Robert Weiss went over all of the terms of the German terms with me. And one of the things that we went over, I think, in that video is the VDP. The VDP is an organization that's been around since 1910. It is essentially a consortia of people that said, we care about quality. We do not think the German government does a very good job. The laws are not in place to make us succeed. And so instead of doing this stupid, the system that Germany came up with, where they do it based on must wait and sweetness, we're going to come up with an organization of really top-notch vintners. There's about 200 of them, okay? But not all the top wineries are in there. And it's really important to know that. If you listen to the podcast I did with Teresa Breuer, who I adore, she will say, Georg Breuer is in Rheingau. She will say that her father, who was before his untimely death, had a very strong aversion to the VDP because in many ways it is a totally elitist organization. And he did not like that. He felt that there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. And so they didn't join. Now, I don't know why Philippe Bassler has decided not to join the VDP, but they are not a VDP property. And the reason that you know that is because there's no eagle on the top with the grapes. That's what VDP has. It doesn't say that anywhere else. But what they did do, which I'm not sure they're really allowed, and I'm sure the VDP probably has sued them for this, is they put Grosses Gewachs on the bottle. Okay, and then they put Trokenc also. Now, Grosses Gewachs should be enough. You shouldn't have to put Trokenc on the bottle. That means a Grand Cru, a great growth of the particular region. Now, I'm going to taste this wine. I'll tell you what I taste, but oh my God. I mean, I don't, VDP or not, this is an excellent, excellent example of what Pfalz can do at its best. This is one of the best Pfalz wines I have ever had. There was another one actually that God darn it, it was in, Wine Spies had it. I know some of you have had it. Oh, Bassler and Jordan. They're the other ones. They're pretty old. But this is a nice color, right? Nice light color. It's got good, a little bit of extraction, but not super dark. Spin it around. So aromatic. Melons. It smells like saline, pineapple, lemon, pear. Got a little bit of lychee in there. It is highly aromatic, but not over the top. So it's not Mosel. It's not overly done, which I don't think Mosel is overly done, but Mosel is very aromatic. This is a little calmer in its profile. And when you taste it, it's almost nutty, lemon and pineapple. And there's just a massive salinity here. This wine has so much salinity from the terroir. It is really awesome. Now, what's crazy is that this is a co-op, and generally speaking, we think about co-ops as being lower quality. But Philippe Bassler is one of the founders of the co-op, and this wine has really exceeded anything that a lot of that co-ops could do. So it really represents to me a quintessential Pfalz wine. Absolutely delicious. So for those of you who've had it, anybody want to talk about it? It seems like people are talking about it in the chat.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing delicious. And I'm very sad that Wine Access, I needed to notify on it because they've run out already.
They'll get it back.
They'll get it back. Yeah, I did a notifier.
Yes.
Would you lay this down and give it a try? See
Yes.
what happens with it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. It is lacking petrol, which, by the way, if you are a Riesling person who does not like petrol, this Pfalz in general is going to be a little bit better for you. But this in particular is going to be a really great wine. This has some characteristics that are, it's just a very special wine. It really is Pfalz at its absolute top. And all of these wines this time that I picked are completely typical of the region. So if you had a Pfalz before and it has not tasted like this is what it should taste like. It's very textbook. This is all, that's the sort of the theme of this set. Scott saying it's lingering on the palate for a really long time. I agree. I think that the salinity, though, is so interesting. Like, you don't always get that out of Riesling, but geez, I mean, this is just so really great. And the acidity is a bit softer because it's from Pfalz as opposed to Mosel or Rheingau or some of the other areas. Marietta and Steve had theirs with shrimp gumbo last week. Delicious. Molly, Riesling was one of the best things I've drank all year. I agree. I think it is delicious, right? A little bit of tropical. I'm getting a bit of pineapple. So I see what you're saying. Tim tried to buy more. They're out of stock. Don't worry, they'll get more back in. Fuller mouthfeel. So again, Pfalz and Alsace, those warmer, drier areas. Kelsey, hi Kelsey. Not super patient, right? So one of the best dry Rieslings at the price point, delicious, right? Really, really delicious. Greg, so in this case, I actually don't know that spice is the best thing for this wine. I think cheese, cream sauces, and like pasta primavera are better. In this case, spiciness is really done best with a bit higher acidity and a little bit more sweet, like a tiny bit of sweetness, or at least sweet fruit. In my opinion, this wine is going to do really well with creamy foods. I happen to have it with some brie. I thought it was excellent with that. There's one wine that I have with the brie tonight that was the ultimate winner, which I will get to. Yeah, and so I think that this really could do well with cream sauces or with creamy things. And what was the other thing? Oh, seafood. So if you had seafood with a cream sauce or even a lemon sauce, that would go really, really well. I don't know that it would necessarily go well with oysters. It has some Chablis-esque notes to it, but maybe, a white fish would be really, really good. Yep. Greg, garlic, cream shrimp. Yes. Garlic would be great. Salmon may be a bit heavy, but it can certainly handle halibut with a cream sauce. I would totally do that. Or, cod. East Coast. That's very East Coast of me to say cod, because obviously Boston is the home of every cod in the world. But yeah, so this is a real thumbs up. And again, why did I select it? I selected it because if you have not had a Pfalz of this quality before, here it is, right? This is what, when Pfalz is at its absolute pinnacle, this is what it should taste like. Okay. So let me take another sip, and then we're going to, because it's so good. And then we're going to move on to the Sauvignon Blanc. Who has a Sauvignon Blanc? Let me get back. Let me get to the regular. Who's doing the Sauvignon Blanc? Bunch of people. Hi, Lisa. Hi. All right. Tina and Bill. We got RW, Rachel, right? RW, Rachel. Yes. Okay. All right. Heidi. All right. Bunch of people. All right. So let's go to the Sauvignon Blanc. Sorry. I had to have another sip before I moved on. By the way, Monica says that Fred says hi and he would like some wine. Ellie does not like wine. She one time had a little bit. It didn't go well. She did have beer one time, and I think she got drunk. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. All right. So again, another example, and it even says it on the notes. So I'm a little embarrassed to say that's like a textbook example, but it is a textbook example. So why do I like this Sauvignon Blanc? This Sauvignon Blanc, the O2 Sauvignon Blanc from 2021, is really edgy, right? This is a Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, and it's slightly stinky, right? It smells like, I don't know what a goose. Actually, I had a gooseberry when I was in France. I can say I've actually had a gooseberry. Woo! Can't say I liked it, but I had it. Gooseberry, but like, I think it really smells very strongly of green pepper. It has the cut grass, tomato leaves, amali. That's totally true, right? So some of that really, really strong herbaceousness. On the flavor, though, it's going to be a little different. We'll wait for a second to taste this. But so New Zealand You can read the wine notes, and I'm here to give you extra value. New Zealand, the thing is that New Zealand Marlborough has 3 different valleys, and the Wairau is much warmer. There's the, oh my gosh, what is the other third? There's another one that's really not very developed, and I cannot remember what it's called right now. But the one that I look for when I buy New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is Awatere. Awatere is where this wine is from. And the reason I look for it is because if you get a wine from Awatere, it is cold, it's windy, there's some elevation, there's terraced vineyards. It has all of the things that are going to lead to something that's got more balance. My issue with Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand is that sometimes it is a little bit sweet in the fruit. It's too big, right? Too mouth-filling with not enough acidity to balance it. Sometimes they leave residual sugar or put residual sugar back, and it can have really pungent flavors. I don't mind pungent flavors if there's acidity to balance it. But if there's no acidity to balance it, then we've got problems, right? We've got something that really just sits in your mouth. This wine, when I opened it and looked at it, I was like, Jesus, it's clear. 0 skin contact, right? We can see that they just pressed and went. There is no color in this grape at all. Normally, even in a Sancerre, you're going to have a tiny bit of color. Nothing, right? Spin it around if you have it and smell it. I mean, I think, Molly, you're right. It does smell like tomato leaf, but it's got those grassy notes, jalapeno pepper, which is always something that I really smell. That spiciness, not just green pepper, but jalapeno, something really spicy, right? So a little bit sharp, and it's got some almost like a mustard seed to it, I think. All right. So basil, right? I agree that herbaceous, whatever, you know, those herbaceous qualities. Now, when you taste it, right? Arugula, Heidi, I'm totally with you on that. When you taste it, it's a different experience. So I'm going to taste it. So you get green pepper, but now it's not jalapeno pepper. Now it's green pepper. The subtlety in your mouth then is replaced by some of the really sharp acidity, mouth cleansing, which sometimes you do not get in a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc anymore, right? This is very old school New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. When New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc first came on the market, most of it was like this: mouth cleansing, great acidity, not too full in the mouth, and then with these really nice, bright, herbaceous notes. This wine has some of that with a bit of tropical flavor, you know, and that is really quite different from some of the lower end examples that I think people associate with the mom wine, which I, of course, hate because I'm a mother, right? Soccer mom wine or whatever. This is a bit more challenging as a wine. Would I pair this with asparagus like that, right? This is an asparagus wine. This is an arugula wine. This is going to go really, really well with some of those harder to pair foods. I even think it would actually do really well with eggs. I think if you had a spring risotto with like peas and asparagus, oh my gosh, this would be totally awesome, right? Chris and Heather think of Oaky Shard as a soccer mom wine. Not anymore. It's New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, but I don't know what it's been replaced by. Now it's been replaced by green juice, right? Because it's not, you know, we don't drink anymore. So had it with eggs for dinner, Rachel. So, and that went really well. I could totally see that. Amy Campbell drank it with shrimp and grits. Fantastic, right? I love this wine. I chose this because I think, again, this is a slightly better example of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc than what I think is on the market. And to me, this has all of the things that they should be doing with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. The potential of better New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough is in this bottle. All right, any questions on this one? Really refreshing. Manchego. My favorite pairing. All right, Pinot. We are going to do the GLF. My friend Greg LaFollette, who a lot of you guys actually came to the hangout with him when he talked about yeast, for like an hour and a half, which is like, I just invited Fernando Buscema, who, if anybody came to the terroir, you can watch it on YouTube. It's open. You don't have to go searching in Patreon for it. But there is Fernando Buscema it works for the Catena Institute for Laura Catena, and he's going to come on and talk about like some super dorky stuff about like wines at elevation and climate change and what it's going to do to the biology of grapes and all this kind of, it's going to be very fun. But anyway, Greg is another one of these people. You know, he was an AIDS researcher. He's a bagpiper. That's what he does in his free time. He loves science. He is super, super dorky. All right, Megan's going to meet him Sunday at a local wine event. I love him. He is very quirky. There's no doubt about it. He's, you know, a great guy. The GLF, which I love, and I forgot, I haven't talked to him about this wine. I need to talk to him about it. So he unfortunately had to shut down Alchemista. It was just, I think it wasn't doing very well, but it was a great, anybody that had Alchemista, those wines were delicious. But he started GLF and he's sourcing from all over the North Coast and he's making something more affordable. And let me just say something. This wine with brie cheese, if you eat it, this will take this wine to a whole other level if you have brie. So I would highly recommend that you have that or some other creamy sort of heavy cheese, or just eat butter, right? That could be the same thing. That's basically brie. All right. So this wine is another when I first had this wine, the thing that I said about it is that it is so light that it's almost like a rosé or a claret, right? This is not what we would expect from a North Coast Pinot or from a California Pinot. And it's 100% what I would expect out of Greg. Greg is someone who really is so interested in Pinot that he does not care whether or not the wine is marketable. Well, that's kind of why Alchemista didn't work. But he's so interested in how to coax the best wine out of Pinot. He and Jim Clenendon, who's passed away, there's a few people who really understand Pinot in California. It's hard to find them though. And so this wine, when you first taste it, if you've not had it yet, it is, okay, so we got a light, nice, really light color. Okay, so swirl it around, sniff. And so I'm going to urge you, if you have this wine, I know it's a screw cap. It seems like pop and pour. You're going to need at least an hour on it for it to develop. Really important note on this wine. It doesn't give what it's going to give right away. So this wine smelled very light an hour ago, and now it smells completely different, much bolder, much stronger, much more like strawberries and raspberries, cherries, those kinds of things. Decanter, Shannon, this is your best decanter that there is. Just pre-pour it in a glass. If you live in a buggy place like me, put a paper towel over it. Yes, if you're going to drink the whole bottle, put it in a decanter, 100%, or a wine glass, again, best decanter, smaller surface area, all of that. Okay, so swirl it around. This is not a heavy Pinot, right? This is a light Pinot. It's a little bit harder to access. It is not an in-your-face Pinot. When you pair it with food, it comes alive. That's Greg's wines. Greg is not somebody who is making wines that are for, honestly, he's not really making wines for the masses. He did make flowers, right? He worked for La Crema for a while. He made flowers for a while. These are bigger wines now, but back in the day, they were much lighter styles of Pinot. Greg seeks out very cool vineyard sites. When he makes his Pinot, he's looking for a light press. He's not looking for big extraction. He's looking for acidity, but this is not a tart wine. It's not over the top, and it's way better with food. If you want to get the most out of this GLF, you've got to have it with food. 100%. This is not a sipping wine. This is a wine that you have with food. Very European in style. Does it taste like anything else from Russian River or from the North Coast, from Sonoma? No, absolutely not. Anderson Valley, nothing. It tastes like nothing else because Greg has a unique relationship with Pinot that I don't think anybody else does. Anybody want to comment on this wine? It's a little bit of a more difficult wine, but I wanted to put it in because I think Greg is the most skilled Pinot, with a few others. He's one of the most skilled Pinot people. Lemon peel, I get that, Todd. Yeah. Oh, Scott, Comte. Scott, do you want to come on the podcast with me when I record with the Comte people? Since you love Comte, or do you want to wait till I have like the Beaujolais people on?
Yeah, I'll do the Beaujolais.
Okay, we'll wait. I don't have them lined up yet, but we'll figure. All right, Tim, different for a Pinot, but I really like it. Kelsey loved the Pinot, thought it was too much oak. Interesting. So I don't see that it's very oaky at all. I feel like it is very, very light. Again, there could be bottle variation, or it could be the decanting. It could be any of that. Did you decant it for a while, Kelsey?
We didn't. Yeah, I didn't think it was oaky, but he thought it was more like heavy, I guess, for that area especially.
Wow, I find it really light.
Yeah, I did too. So maybe
Yeah.
it was just crazy.
Well, we already know he's crazy.
Right, exactly.
Right. It does have a little bit of coffee on the finish, but I think that it actually needs food to have more flavor. Rachel's been disappointed by California Pinot lately. I agree. And I think that this is much more restrained. Molly's had this wine before, a favorite around your house. Yeah. More restrained, right? Not so in your face, but the fruit is there and it's got some really interesting flavors to it. Okay. So I think that is a lovely wine, but the best service you can pay that wine is having it with food. Okay. It will taste way better if you have it with food. I think that it is nice on its own, but I wouldn't sip it I don't prefer to sip that without food, but, that is my personal preference. All right, let us move on. We're going to now go to the Gran Reserva. Oh, does somebody have a question?
Yeah, Sandra here. Question about the decanting. So curious that, you keep the wine at like 58 degrees or 60 degrees, then you decant it for an hour and it becomes room temperature, but that's cool? Or do you decant it in a cool place?
Well, you can decant it and then you can do what I do, which is very, very lame, but I will do it anyway, which is I'll put one of those ice cubes I always talk about in there if it's too cold, the plastic ice cubes that I love so much. If I find that it's not cold enough. The other thing that I've been known to do is to pour it. And by the way, any class takers, if you want to do this, I will pour it in a water cup and put it in the fridge to cool the water down. So then it's still it's still, getting air. But usually I choose to leave it out on the counter and cool it down afterwards.
Okay.
That's usually what I prefer to do. If you've got just a glass, right? If you're just taking a glass. Now, if you've got a bottle, there's many better ways to do that, right? You can put it in, a cold solution of salt water and ice, in a bowl. That'll chill it down immediately. You can put it in the fridge for a little bit and that'll make it cold. It's hopefully the wine, if the bottle is not at like 70, but only that you've decanted it for about an hour, to Greg's point, put it back in the fridge and you're fine. You're absolutely fine because it doesn't take that long for it to get cold again. And I think that temperature matters a lot. Tim, you're absolutely right. So one of the things I actually really love in the garage, one of the things I love is that Ellie my dog is a giant pain in the butt. And she likes to play outside at night. She got into this terrible habit because we put our kids to bed and then we would take care of Ellie, right, at night. And so when it's cold outside, I love it because I'll take my glass outside. And Tim, this is absolutely true. If it's cold out, you can actually leave your glass outside for a little while, but I'm playing with my dog. The glass gets so cold and it's a perfect temperature. But the same idea lives, it exists with the fridge too, right? I mean, it's the same thing. I make great use of those plastic ice cubes, huge use of them. I will use one or two. I think they work very quickly. I think they're pretty great. So that's usually how I will, and then I'll fish them out, sometimes I won't, but I'll fish them out. They work really well. And depending on how cold you want the wine, you put 3 in, you can put 5 in, you can put 8 in, it doesn't really matter, but that will take care of your problem very quickly. Amy and Mark, yeah, plastic ice cubes are just fantastic. Hold on a second. Let me see if MCIs, I'm going to show you. MCIs, could you bring an ice cube in here? Like the plastic ones? I'm just going to assume he heard me. Okay. Aromatically, yes, I feel that is true. All right. So Monica won a gadget called the Vaux chiller. Seems to work well, but is pricey. Those plastic ice cubes are very cheap. Yeah. So, it's sealed. This is hard as a brick. You put it in, it's fantastic. And it costs like $10 for, maybe $8 for 20 on Amazon. This thing is a lifesaver. Don't chew on them and don't put them down the disposal, but eventually you will have to order them because you'll wind up putting them down the disposal. But, I mean, if you put this in, what do I feel like I might need it actually in this, in the Bordeaux, but if you put it in, I mean, you just leave it there for a second. It doesn't take that long before it gets cold. You feel the outside of the glass and then you'll know whether the wine is ready. Okay. So I think that's the best solution. I know a lot of other people people freeze grapes, they do whatever, but I love them. Frozen brie in the chill. I think that's a bad idea. Whiskey rocks work well. So Chris, my only problem is I'm too klutzy and some of my glassware is too thin. So I prefer the plastic stuff because you can never break, right? And that's what I worry about. Bill is ordering right now. They're Amazon, so cheap. Get the clear ones. They have the colored ones too. Okay, let's move on to Rioja. I had this Rioja. Just disclosure, I love Rioja. I love Rioja. I think Rioja is one of the most underestimated wines there is. I don't even drink enough Rioja. I love it. I feel like it is the wine that when you have it, it just keeps on giving. Like, you're like, I don't really even understand why some of this is like this, but it is. It's amazing. And this one, hot dog, I found one that's got American oak. Okay. This is a great use of American oak. We poo-poo American oak. We think that, oh God, it's going to be over the top. Not here. They've done, of course, it's Bodegas Riojanas, which has been around for over 100 years, 132 years. They established in 1890, 80% Tempranillo, 15% Masuelo or Carignan, and 5% Graciano. Graciano is an amazing grape, really floral. You only need a little bit of it to go a very long way. So first, they ferment this in clay tinajas, which are basically amphora, but they stand straight up and down. So they'll do that, and that's going to add some color. It's going to add some flavor, and it's going to add some oxygen. And then they store it in American oak. Gran Reserva is required 30 months in oak, and then it's got to marry for another 6 months. They've got to put the blend together in the bottle before it is allowed to be released. So Gran Reserva is only made in the best years, and it is a very special wine. Bodegas Riojanas is not a young winery. They know what they're doing. So in this case, all right, so we've got a wine that is a little bit, let me find a white piece of paper here. It's a little bit lighter than you would expect from a Rioja. Tempranillo throws a lot of color, but still pretty dark. It's 10 years old, right? So this wine is 10 years old. Could it go longer? It could go longer. If you want to save it, you haven't opened it, go ahead. I put mine under core. I use the core of it. All right. So when you smell this, yes, you're going to smell some oak, but it's coffee. It's this kind of mellow plum note. It's tea leaves. It's got, gosh, what is that? Almost a dried strawberry. Oh my God, I'm just getting, there's a smell of childhood in there and I'm not sure what it is. Could it be strawberry shortcake? Who's with me, Gen X? Strawberry shortcake, the doll, vanilla, right? Some vanilla there. That is really, it's strong, it's powerful, but it's got some grounding in it and it's not going to be so heavy, right? So taste it if you have it. Coffee. Who was the one who said they don't get leather? Is anybody on here from Patreon who said they don't get leather? Here's the leatheriness. Nice tannin. It is going to be a medium-bodied wine because it's old, right? So here's your chance to try a 10-year-old Rioja. Now, can Rioja age for much longer? It can. But I think this is a really good glimpse into when we talk about on the show and when we talk about anytime that we're having these discussions about aging, how the wine is going to get lighter with age. And it is not so powerful, but it's got this just unbelievable development. Heidi, the leather, right? The tobacco. I get that. Again, strawberry shortcake. There it is. Molly, strawberry shortcake doll is still at your parents' house. Oh my gosh, bring it home. I also have the cookie, sugar cookie. And I feel like there might be a little bit of that here too, but maybe I'm just forcing the issue here. But you know, when you taste this wine, I think you really feel the power of Tempranillo. However, the thing that I want you to think about, this is a very classic example of a Gran Reserva. Gran Reserva is old already when it's released. This is already 10 years old, so it's beyond, you know, it's gotten into its older age, or at least, you know, when we're used to keeping it. And these wines have unbelievable subtlety and medium body, but still have so much flavor. And I think that that's the real beauty of an aged Rioja. So really, really delicious. Kelsey's got the strawberry shortcake down. Loves, yeah, I agree with you, Kelsey. I'm not generally an older wine person either, except for Bordeaux, which it needs it, trust me. B for sure. Sure. I think maybe our next couple of wines may be better with that. This is a little more challenging. I feel like, so if we think about Spanish cuisine, jamon, or, you know, they're more into some of the dried meats, dried salty cured meats. And then we also have got, you know, the meaty mushrooms. Think about the tapas here, some things with wine that are cooked in wine. So I think anything, if you've got beef that's got some mushroomy note to it, this is going to go really, really well with that. Mariana and Steve loved this. Earthy dark fruit, pork chops, and Spanish rice. What grows together goes together. So, we're having a holly hobby versus strawberry shortcake. I do not think they can be compared. We can have this debate afterwards. I totally disagree that those two is interchangeable. That's like being like Barbie and like the Bratz dolls. It's just totally different, whatever. All right.
I got a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're talking about American oaks, right? That's going to impart a lot more oakiness, but I noticed they were using barrique, so that's much bigger. So that's going to really be a bigger wood, but in a bigger barrel, so it's going to impart less. So you get like a neutral out of that because of the combination.
I am not sure how. Remember that barrique does not necessarily mean, I don't know what the tonnage on that is. So it doesn't have to be, a barrique is just a barrel. It's not necessarily a large barrel, right? A barrique is just an oak barrel. I don't know how large they are. Normally in Rioja, they do use slightly bigger barrels. A place like Bodegas Riojanas, which is old and has tradition, is definitely going to use bigger barrels. But a barrique is just a 225 liter or 228 liter barrel. It doesn't matter. It's just a barrel. So I would assume here, given the traditional nature of it, that they are bigger, but it definitely has some oak influence. So I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that and figure it out. So I think, but these wines are really just, I think the idea that American oak can't work, it works with Zinfandel and it works with Rioja really, really well. Whether it be big or small barrique, I'm not sure. I should have looked that up. But this is a really classic style. They also destem the grapes. So they know that already they're going to have a lot of tannin. So they're taking out the stems. And they've got low alcohol, because the other thing about Bodegas Riojanos, they have nothing in the Oriental or Baja region. They have nothing in the lower plains. All of their vineyards are in Alavesa and Alta. So that means that they're going to get really great acidity from that mountain fruit. Okay. So really just a really super classic example of what you will get out of a Gran Reserva. And there are others too. I just want to say, I love Bodegas Riojanos, but Cune has amazing stuff. Viña Tondonia has great stuff. All of the Lopez de Aro. There's so many great producers in Rioja that have Gran Reservas that are worth trying on. So really nice. Okay. Scott saying stunningly good. If you want to see stunningly good, let's move on to the Rauzan-Gassies. I don't mean to make you jealous, but I did write this in the thing. This was the first wine that I collected, an 05 Chateau Rauzan-Gassies from Margaux. It's a second growth. I lived in Atlanta, and I'm sorry to say this, but it is not a very sophisticated European wine market. So I used to go to the Kroger there, which had some sort of special relationship where they could buy things that were off their traditional list. And I found that in the closeout bin and bought 2 bottles. One broke in my move. I literally was licking the floor, but we did have that one, which I still think I opened a little early, and it was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. Now, this wine, L'Orme de Rauzan-Gassies, is a little different. First of all, 2016 is another stunner of a vintage in the Médoc, but Rauzan-Gassies is in Margaux, and this plot is in the Haut-Médoc. So the Haut-Médoc is a very interesting area because it is outlying areas, but it's much more confined than you might think. And I feel like we should probably do a podcast on it just to talk about the definitions around Haut-Médoc, because it's not the entire area. It's some very specific areas. And in fact, some of the areas in the Haut-Médoc most of them are in the north of the commune. So it's north of Saint-Estèphe. It's cooler, which means it's got a lot of really great acidity. And a lot of times it is on a bed of limestone, which we don't hear limestone a lot when we're talking about Bordeaux. But right there, there's a lot of limestone. In fact, there are some producers that grow Chardonnay up in the northern Haut-Médoc. So this wine is a plot that the family owns, who actually acquired Rauzan-Gassies in 1997. I think that one of the most, if you have not listened to it or you glossed over it, one of the most important lessons I have ever learned about the Médoc come from my friend Edouard Miaille. Edouard Miaille, so the Miaille family from Chateau is one of the oldest and most respected families in the entire Médoc. They have been there so long, so much longer than all of many of the other families there. The Rothschilds, they came around the same time as the Rothschilds. So they have been there, and they've been very, very consistent and have helped other people. When Edouard was on the first time, he said that, you know, when he was growing up, and he laughs about it, that it was basically, excuse my language, excuse my French, you know, Bordeaux was like a shithole. I mean, the 1970s were the crappiest times, 60s and 70s. Bordeaux was so, like, we look at it now, we're like, oh, it's so fancy. Even these great estates, they were shitty. Things were in bad condition. Remember, they'd been through 2 world wars in not that many decades. The rebuilding was hard. There was no money. They were really having a very difficult time. And except for the very top chateau, it was really difficult. So we see that a lot of these chateaux went into decline. And that is the case with the original owners of Rauzan-Gassies. And then it got acquired. So the family that acquired it in 1997 had some money, but they also had property originally in Haut-Médoc. This is their original wine. And then they bought the wine in Margaux. Okay. So this, although we would normally think of a wine from the right bank as perhaps being lighter than a wine from the left bank, in this case, one, we've got a cooler climate in the northern Haut-Médoc, and we also have some lighter soils. This is gravel. And yes, we've got Cabernet Sauvignon, but this is a lighter style Bordeaux. And this is why I say on the show a lot of times, right? Okay, Bordeaux, we think, oh, well, it's got to be this big wine, right? No. And if you're tasting this wine, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Very dark in color, but not huge, right? So just super dark fruit. It's got earthiness. It smells like land. I mean, it's got a little bit of decaying leaf. It's got some coffee notes. I mean, I just smelled dirt. I smell a lot of earth there. Okay. I feel like this kind of dances on your palate. It is not heavy. It's a medium bodied wine that has nice dark fruit to it, but it's got lots of complexity. If you're somebody who likes earth in a wine, I think this is such a textbook example of what old school, old style Bordeaux can be from the Médoc. And this punches way above its price point, especially because it's 2016, which is was just a spectacular year on the left bank. And so this wine really, really exhibits a lot of the best stuff about the left bank for a fraction of the price. Now, is it like the Rauzan-Gassies? No. Margaux is much warmer. So you're going, and they actually use a much bigger proportion of Merlot usually. Now they're using more Cab. That's a little bit softer. The alcohol is a bit higher. The alcohol here, I didn't even check the alcohol percent, but it is 14.5%. So actually that doesn't apply here. That's pretty high percentage, but 2016, again, ripe vintage. So really, really a very, very nice wine. I would recommend decanting it. I would recommend, they say decant it for 15 minutes. I would say decant it for at least an hour. Mine's been open for an hour and a half. I think it is way better for it. So decant on that. Sandra, finishing the Bordeaux from the French class, opened up yesterday. Excellent. Mine doesn't taste like what you're tasting today. So this is a lighter style, very refined. I really love it. 80 loved this one. 2016, ready to enjoy now. For this, yes. Todd, if you're going to collect a wine, like if I had the Rauzan-Gassies, so I had this in 2020, 15 years. It was ready. It probably could have gone longer. I have more Bordeaux from 2000, is it 05? I don't think I have any 05 left, but I've got some 2010, and that is sitting there, and I will not drink that probably until 2030. I like when the Bordeaux tannins round out a little bit, but it just depends, right? It really, it's going to depend, but I do love this. And I think, yes, I think 80, you're right. Enjoying it over a couple of days, I say this all the time, and I really do walk the walk. I mean, I hope you guys know that I do walk my own walk, which is that I will open, I use the Corvin on this because I have the cab around the world class, and I don't want to open too much wine. And I've got 3 screw caps that I just opened. But once you open that wine, you put the cork back in and drink it slowly over the next couple of days. Usually on day 3 or 4 is when it's going to hit its stride. So don't drink it right away. Maybe open it and then open something else. Yeah, another 5 to 10 would be great. Delicious. Peggy, didn't get here till March 10th. Does it need to settle? Yeah, I usually like to wait 2 weeks, Peggy. That's what I would say. That's kind of my standard, 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, people who send me samples hate that, but too bad. Sometimes I like to settle it for longer, and that's just the way it goes. All right, let's go to this last wine, which I think is like, oh my God, it's so impressive. It's a 2019. I don't even feel like it should be ready, but it's so delicious that I can't imagine. I mean, I guess it would improve with time if you wanted to lay it down, but this wine is tasting so good right now that it would be hard for me to tell you not to drink it because it's kind of irresistible. It's a Merlot lead. It does need, again, some decanting in order for it to be really, really good. And this is a smaller winery in Saint-Émilion, and it's got a lot of power. If you want to see what Merlot can do, here we go. Why did I include this? So I included the Rauzan-Gassies because I love the fact that it's from the Médoc and it's lighter. Okay, so you can have a wine that's from the left bank and it's lighter than a wine from the right bank. We need to sort of think about terroir when we think about Bordeaux. And I think that the problem, again, the biggest thing that I learned from my trip last year in the Médoc is that they do a horrible job of talking about the differences in terroir. But let me just actually, hold on, I have something right here. I'm going to show you something. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So if you see, do you see this? See the oyster shell there? Where do you think that this is from? It's probably from like Burgundy, right? Or like Chablis, Muscadet. This is from Saint-Estèphe in Bordeaux. In vineyards in Saint-Estèphe in Bordeaux, there are fossilized oyster shells all over the place, okay? Barnacles. See that? Do you know how many millions of years old this is? This is from deep in the soil, and this stuff is old and still living in and you can find it all over Saint-Estèphe. This was in Chateau de Combe. But if that's not clear enough, I don't know what is. Okay. And this is Bordeaux. What does Bordeaux do? They never talk about this. They never talk about how in Saint-Estèphe there's fossilized oyster shell, fossilized clam shells and oyster shells all over the place. There's barnacles, and that this is pure limestone rock. It is overlain by clay and other things, but it is really important to understand that when you taste that Haut-Médoc, which is all the way north in Bordeaux, that's where that is from, this is what you're getting in the subsoil. And that's why that is not heavy or brawny or Napa or any of those things. Not to say that Napa has bad wine. I'm just saying that's going to give that really great balance and flavor. Hard to imagine because they do such a crap job of marketing. But that's when you taste that Rauzan-Gassies, you will see what's the lighter sense of being. It's this piece of rock that has barnacles and that you can find in any vineyard in Saint-Estèphe. Strange, and guess what? They never freaking talk about it. Dumb. Okay, so this is the Chateau de Pressac, and I think that this for this to taste this good, this young, is really just almost sinful. It is super dark. I did not check the alcohol level on this, but again, 2019, 14 and a half, 2019, pretty ripe year. Great year, another great year. I mean, of course, these days there isn't a ton of vintage variation. Burgundy's still having a lot of problems, but you can't even see your fingers through it, which in a Merlot, that's kind of rare. And you know, as you, it seems like it defies, okay, well, that's got cabinet. This is almost all Merlot. I mean, it's got those really lovely cherry and brandy notes. If anybody, is anybody tasting this one? It's like brandy and cherry, and it's full and rich, and it smells like a bit like decayed leaves. It's got some of the mushroom note. It has umami, those savory notes. Okay, tasting it. And it's so smooth. That's why I'm saying you could hold on to this, but gosh, I mean, like, it's just so nice. The tannins are fine. They're not rough at all, because this is a wine that has been ripened to its full ripening potential. Yes, Scott, it is velvety. It's really soft. It is a very, oh wait, let's just use all of the terms from last week's podcast. It's a sensual Rubens nude with the essence of female lingerie. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. Pantene hair products commercial. I don't know. Is that good? Very sexy. So yeah. But I think this is a really one. I don't know. So somebody asked, sorry, I did, how long would you hold on to this? Heidi, if you put a Corvin in this and taste it, you're not going to be able to hold on to it. It's really good. I would say the Rauzan-Gassies, the Haut-Médoc, you can hold on to that. You can age that a little bit longer. It's ready now, but it still has a bit of rough edges. You could probably hold on to that. You could even hold on to the Gran Reserva for a few more years, but this one, I think it would be a shame to let it go. It's so perfect right now. It's Saint-Émilion. So Saint-Émilion has the clay soils, more clay and some limestone. So in this case, the wine is so soft, yet it has structure, right? It has acidity, but it's not sticking out anywhere. It's got 14.5% alcohol, which for Saint-Émilion is kind of high. And at the same time, it has really beautiful tannins that are not, cutting up your mouth at all. I think they're beautiful. I really, really, really love this. So it is a beautiful wine. I think it's ready now. Out of all of the Pinot is ready now, and I think that the Saint-Émilion Grand Cru, if you can't resist, drink it now, because it really is so good. It's worth it. Yeah. All right. What questions? Will Wine Access have more to sell to us? Yeah, I think that most of these are still available. They do sell them. I can find out if there's anything. I know the Riesling is out of stock, but it will go back in stock. I know that that's like one of the wines that they definitely pride themselves on. Most of the wines that they have, or a lot of them, are direct import. So they are getting them directly. Doesn't mean you can't find them elsewhere. Just like how Serge Doré, he imports a lot of wines, but some of you on the West Coast can get those same wines. So there's different importers everywhere, but they get pretty good deals because they buy a decent amount. And yeah, these are just really, really super delicious. Let me see what everybody's saying. Yeah, Scott, I think this wine is really fantastic. What would I pair with this? I think this is a meat wine. I think that this is where you can have a fillet. You can have, I don't think burgers. I think you want something finer, but something that's got a substantial amount of flavor. You can even do something with a red wine sauce. So I think that some of the kind of, or if you're vegetarian, mushrooms would be the best thing with this. Hard cheeses, so aged Gouda, hard cheddar, those kinds of things are going to be really nice with this wine. Nuts, so anything that's got a kind of a nut preparation would be really great with this. I would, stay away from asparagus and things that are a little bit greener. It doesn't have any green in it, so I think that's going to be a problem. But hearty food for sure. Even stews, things like that are going to work well. Amy Campbell got a 16. That was really disappointing. Oh, SE. I'm not sure what that is. I might have messed that up. I don't know, Amy. I think I messed that up in the conversation. All right. Just ordered the More Margot. Is that the Rauzan-Gassies, Donna? GLF right now. They have the GLF. Grab a
Yes.
few.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's that. They must have plenty of it because I just ordered a ton.
Nice. All right. Awesome. Scott is saying he's carrying the water for Comte and saying Comte. It is true though, Scott. Comte goes with everything. I have not had anything bad with Comte yet. Preview the next wine club shipment. Spoiler alert. Guess where I'm going at the beginning of May? Tuscany. And some of you are coming with me. And so this shipment will be wines of Tuscany and Piedmont. We're just solidifying it. Some of them will actually be the wines of places that we will be visiting on the trip. So you will have an opportunity to taste those. Some of them, I arranged the visits based on the fact that I'd had these wines and that Wine Access had these relationships. So we're going to go visit them. So you'll be able to follow it on Patreon, and then you'll be able to taste some of these wines. Also, right now I've launched 2 new classes. If anybody's interested, getting better wines out of California, because I haven't taught that in a really long time, and Wines of Tuscany. And that is an international class. So that's going to be on the daytime on a Saturday. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific, so that our European counterparts can hear about that. That class is going to be right on the heels. I'm literally teaching it 2 days after I get back from Tuscany and Campania. I'm spending a bunch of time in Campania, which I'm super excited about, because that's going to be awesome, and perhaps scouting it out for a future trip. We'll see. But fortunately, I'm buddies with Antonio Cabaldo, who's been on the show from Feudi San Gregorio, and he's helping me get some of the stuff together for Vesuvius and Campania. And then we're going to be spending an entire week in Tuscany, where you're going to see all these pictures. And then the Saturday after that, you can take the class if you want. And again, with our European counterparts. Heidi, next time my son makes steak. Yep, absolutely. Let's see, no Rioja. Again, these are wines that I think you will be able to get again. They've drained the wine. They've drained the wine club. So I think they've drained a lot of their stock with the wine club. There is still, if you like all these wines, there's still another, you can probably write to them and get another case if you want of all of these wines, because there's 25 spots left in the wine club. I think I'm surprised that it didn't fill up all the way. I have to be honest, but we had like 200 shipments and 175 people bought. Chris, get that Saturday off. Sorry. Hopefully you can. Bobby, I would never go to the Languedoc. I hate Languedoc. I don't do French trips, at least right now, because I don't think it's a great experience. French people generally do not prefer to have Americans in their vineyards. So at least in my experience, Spain or Portugal will probably be next. If not, Italy will continue. Oh, sorry, Amy, Saint-Émilion. Only negative to Better Wines of California class is the inclusion of Chardonnay. Hey, that Chardonnay is from, I think I have the, oh no, I've got a Chardonnay from the Sonoma Coast, and it's pretty good. Rachel got a bottle of Riesling from Wine Access in November. They do get shipments regularly. yeah, so what other questions or whatever? Now we can just hang out and talk. So who wants to start? Nothing?
Elizabeth, yeah, I do have a question. Just, I did get some Saint-Émilion from last bottle, I think, but it's a 2020. And I'm thinking, is that like 5 years that I should hold it or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the
2025.
winery though. Did you look at what Chateau it was? I don't know all the Chateau. You'll have to look. I mean, look at whether or not it's, so Saint-Émilion is tricky because if the stuff is on clay, then oftentimes it's going to be something you're going to want to age. But if it's more on the limestone, then you might want to drink it a little earlier because it's got good acidity. It's a little brighter and fresher. Just try to see if you can poke around and find out a little bit more.
Supposedly-
2020 was a good year on the right bank and less good on the left bank.
Supposedly it's granite and limestone.
Yeah, so then drinking it earlier rather than later is probably fine. I'd still probably wait 2 years if you can resist.
Yeah, that's not hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think that Merlot does well with age, but not too much age. You don't want to overdo, you know?
What is your rule in Barolo?
Barolo, I mean, it depends on, again, so this is the problem, Neil, with Barolo is that we don't know what the producers are aiming for. If it's a non-traditional producer, they're going to pick later for phenolic ripeness, this idea that, you know, the tannin should be soft and the alcohol should be high. And in that case, you can drink it within, 5 to 7 years. But traditional Barolo, I mean, if you're going to buy, a traditional Barolo producer, you still have to wait like 10 years. I mean, here's the big shame about my one big problem with visiting Piedmont is that I think eventually you get the hang of it. But when you first visit and you start to taste these Barolos, they don't taste that great. So what you have to do is eventually see what the potential is, right? What is the potential in the eventual trajectory of this wine? Because at first, like Nebbiolo, really good Nebbiolo is harsh and firm and tough in its use. And you have to be able to say like, through this, am I able to see a trajectory where this will age well? Because the problem is the Barolo producers, even if you go there, they don't have any old stuff. They just have to give you like whatever they have, which is recent. So I think Barolo is very tough, but a traditional producer, 10 years is the minimum.
So you're a middle school teacher trying to figure out what this person's going to be after college.
Except that, yes, but you know what? Okay, but we all know, unless like, again, okay, well, this is a good thing, unless like drugs intervene or they have like a messed up friend, likely that overachiever is going to do pretty well and they're going to make it, right? They're going to do really well. They're going to be the Neil McDonald's. But the F up, it's going to stay that way. It's not going to get any better. So I think Barolo is a tricky game because Nebbiolo you've got to wait on that. And we drink Nebbiolo way too young, but I guess I've got some Barolos from like 2015. I'm not drinking that anytime soon. That stuff's going to just sit.
Why is the Nebbiolo from Barboursville? It seems more, I mean, I've tried it and it's not old, but it seems to be more drinkable than say a 5-year-old Barolo.
Well, it depends on what he's doing with it. I don't know. I actually have a very old Nebbiolo from Barboursville in there because I tasted, Luca gave me a sample of something really old that he had done and it was way better. So actually even those wines can benefit. The difference there is that Barboursville, so he does grow some of that stuff on mountainside, but it's a little bit hotter there traditionally. I guess now Piedmont has gotten hotter, but it's a little bit hotter there. So they're able, and the latitude is way lower than what it is in Barolo. So you have kind of longer days in the fall still. In the fall in Piedmont, you're getting shorter and shorter days, you know, because you're up at 45 degrees, 40, I think it's like 46 degrees, 45 degrees north latitude. So think about where Barboursville is. It's like, I guess I'm at 36. So like, where are you guys? 38, 40?
Yeah, probably about 38, 39.
Yeah, so that like those degrees of latitude, we have much longer days than Boston, right? Like in the
Oh, yeah.
fall, right? Because like my sister lives in Boston. She starts complaining in September that like the days are like, you know, 2 hours of sunlight. So I think that matters because, and that's why, you know, I do think it's very important to understand that, yeah, the summer matters, but again, the fall, what happens in the fall is super important. And Luca gets a lot more hours of sunlight and a lot more forgiving, you know, weather a lot of times in those falls, especially because in the Southeast, we tend to get these Indian summers. So, and Piedmont doesn't always have that. Sometimes the rains come early. So, you know, again, it just depends. But I think even his Nebbiolo benefits. I do have to drink that wine. I think it's like 10 years old. But good stuff. I still would hold on to it. I will see you all again soon. Thank you for being part of this wine club. I hope that the wines are what you expected or better than what you expected. I mean, as I've said many times, I am so Wine Access sends me things and they are very selective. And then I put another filter on top of theirs because I have standards and I think about all of you when I think about whether or not something is going to be good enough, whether it's on the podcast, here, anything. I mean, I just don't think, I think there's not enough people who are picky enough. So I feel like that's my job. So hopefully these wines, even if there's one that you don't love, that at least at the minimum, that it's going to provide you with a really great educational opportunity to understand that this is really, even if you don't like it, it's a classic example. This is really what these wines taste like, each and every one of these. So that's kind of the point of this. And hopefully the Italian wines are really, I'm very excited about that. And then the Surge wines, of course, it will be all French wines and they will be knockouts. And Scott, there will be plenty of Beaujolais. Don't worry. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Don't worry. We're going to be doing more hangouts like this. We'll be doing the World Cup of Wine. We'll be doing more stuff like this. And then again, when the next shipment comes out, you can be sure we're here. And I will, if anyone has questions about specific wines, just hit me up on Patreon and I can find out from the team at Wine Access, or you can write to them directly and just tell them that I told you to write them and then they'll pay more attention. Okay. So hopefully, and if not, I will write them. They usually get back to me right away. So, you know, some of you, Tina, you know, might have seen some of the fairy dust come your way. If you have any problems with Wine Access, you should let me know immediately. Okay. Because there's some fairy dust that can be sprinkled. Right, Tina?
Yes, indeed. And thank you very much. It was here and ready for me for this evening.
That's, you know, I was not going to leave you high and dry. So just let me know, guys. All right. Always, right? I mean, you know, not if my French is bad. We've already established that. But if I can help you in any way, that's what I'm here for. All right. All right. Mwah. Thank you, guys. Enjoy these. Have food with them, and I will see you soon. I'll see some of you on Saturday, and hopefully I'll see some of you either in the classes or in the hangouts. All right. Good night.